Hello and welcome to the Hand of Pod. This is the first time you're joining us. I'm usually joined by one of my co-hosts, but with sicknesses and Easter holidays, I'm on my own for this episode. So hopefully you don't get bored with my monologue as I talk you through some fascinating football nostalgia, football history pieces that we got for you today. We are on our second player in the greatest 100 players of all time, number 99, who is a Argentinian World Cup hero. But before we talk about that, I'm going to be talking about left backs. As I'm on my own today, this is a bit of a monologue to keep it interesting. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try and put in some edits and some clips that I find that are relevant to what I'm talking about. So hopefully that will keep you interested and yeah, keep it flowing and keep it a little bit more than just me giving you a lecture about football. But yeah, so left backs. For me, there's kind of two types of left backs. There's the defensive left back, the static left-sided defence, solid, reliable, does a job defensively. And then there's the attacking left back, kind of traditionally was known as a wing back, who'll be bombing it up and down that side, and getting forward and becoming part of the attack, overlapping fullbacks. And I think mainly when I was growing up, really in the 90s, first and foremost, you wanted that reliable, steady left back that wasn't going to make mistakes and was going to do a job at the back. And the attacking left backs were kind of a bit of a luxury, and sometimes it could be seen as a bit of a liability. But when you look at the greatest left backs to have played, they've all got something going forward that they bring to the game, and something different. Then none of them are that kind of static fullback that we used to see quite regularly. And probably the first left back that I used to take a long time looking at was Dennis Irwin. And for Man United back in the 90s, and he could play right back as well, but he was incredibly reliable, consistent, and flexible. Would be able to come inside, get forward, and a brilliant dead ball specialist. And I think, especially left backs, I mean, plenty of right backs have been as well, but I think it's that kind of cultured left foot that, for some reason, I think striking the ball with your left foot seems just so much more cultured than striking it with your right. I don't know if that's because most of us are right-footed, so the left foot, hitting it well with the left foot seems very alien to us. So someone doing it well is a bit more magical. But I think over the years we've probably seen a lot more left backs, left fullbacks that have been able to take free kicks and penalties and have been that attacking fullback in the game. But I remember someone like Ian Hart, for example, for Leeds back in the 90s, who took all free kicks, penalties, corners, all that type of stuff. He wasn't like an incredibly attacking player. He would get forward, but the majority of his attacking play came from the dead ball. And despite me talking about Dennis Irwin and then him kind of being succeeded at Man United by Patrice Evra, another incredibly talented left back, and perhaps one of France's best, probably beaten by Lizarazu, who was part of the 98 World Cup winning team, and short in stature, which I think is quite common for a fullback to be quite short. But he was a Bayern Munich legend as well as France. 9 seasons with Bayern Munich, won the Bundesliga 6 times, and after winning the World Cup with France in 1998 and the Euros with them in 2000, he then won the Champions League with Bayern Munich in 2001, and he was that kind of up and down, never running out of energy. And I think a lot of the quality left backs that we've seen over the years have been the ones that have just got bundles of energy, just never ending running, and being able to get back and defend as well as getting up and supporting the team in attack. I'd say probably England's greatest left back, and most likely the best ever left back in the Premier League era is Ashley Cole, who's just been inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame. Now, he won 3 titles with Chelsea and one Champions League title, but I remember him very fondly as an England fan, that we often would go into tournaments knowing that we had the best left back. Perhaps in that era, Roberto Carlos was the only other left back that you kind of compare him to at that time, but Roberto Carlos was always that kind of enigma about how attacking he was, and how much of a dead ball specialist he was, and how hard he could hit the ball from range. But I think a lot of us always had this idea of the Roberto Carlos gap, that if especially when we were playing FIFA in our younger days, that if we were playing anyone who was Real Madrid or Brazil, that we'd just be able to stick the ball down their left-hand side, and there'd be a big gap in behind because Roberto Carlos had got forward so much. So I don't think he was known for his defending as much as his attacking, but Ashley Cole was such a good defender, as well as being quite an overlapping fullback. And he was known for some amazing performances in his career, notably for keeping Cristiano Ronaldo quiet every time they met, for England against Portugal, as well as for Chelsea against United and Madrid. And I think Ronaldo has said that Ashley Cole's the best left back he's played against.
There's some impetus here for Cristiano Ronaldo. Oh, that was a great sprint. Ashley Cole is very quick and was at full tilt to keep up the man with the ball.
Well, yet again, Frank Lampard caught in possession by Paul Scholes. That releases Manchester United on the attack. But this is top-class defender from Ashley Cole.
Chelsea in a hurry to...
And yeah, he deserves that Hall of Fame place that he's now got, and yeah, it was a joy to be an England fan with him in our team back in those days. And there's a quote from Jimmy Greaves saying he's the best English fullback that he's ever seen, and the best left back in the world for several years. Yeah, that kind of goes with what I was saying, that he's up there with the best of them for me, Ashley Cole, and definitely the best we saw in England, to be honest. And another English left back to mention is Emlyn Hughes, nicknamed Crazy Horse for an infamous rugby tackle on Newcastle's Albert Bennett. He was one of the key members of Shankly's and later Bob Paisley's great Liverpool team of the 70s, captained the team many times, and so, I mean, obviously being part of that Liverpool team, his trophy haul is pretty impressive. Won 4 league titles, an FA Cup, 2 UEFA Cups, 2 European Cups, Liverpool for 12 years, and then he later won the League Cup with Wolverhampton Wanderers. He was Footballer of the Year in 1977, which is a mean feat for a fullback 62 caps for England and captained them on 23 occasions. So yeah, Emlyn Hughes has to be mentioned if we're talking about English fullback. But like I said, Dennis Irwin, another the Irishman, he was the linchpin of that United team in the 90s. Very long, successful career, and even when Beckham started in the team, he would be kind of taking it in turns with Beckham on free kick duty. It's hard to imagine now that somebody would be taking free kicks when Beckham's there, but Dennis Irwin was taking his fair share. But he 12 years at United, a lot of silverware, as Emlyn Hughes did, seven Premier Leagues, 3 FA Cups, 1 League Cup, 1 Cup Winners' Cup, and the Champions League when he was part of the treble winners in 99. Now, if we go way back when, there's a left wing-back called Victor Andrade, who was from Uruguay. Now, he 42 caps for Uruguay, but he played in the 1950 and 1954 World Cup. And he was one of the greatest, what would be known as halfbacks in the world during the first half of the 50s. And he could operate on the left and the right side, but primarily a left-sided player, although very two-footed. He was regarded as a successor to the nephew of Jose Leandro Andrade. Andrade was a complete defensive player, and he was one of the early adopters of a fullback who would be that kind of defensive and offensive player, getting forward, getting back, up and down that left flank. Played for Central Espanyol, moved to Penarol. At the peak of his career, 3 times Uruguayan champions, 1950 World Cup winner, and he was in the 1950 World Cup Best 11. And he was the only Uruguayan player in his generation to win both the World Cup and the South American Championship, which he won with Uruguay in 1956. Going forward a bit, there's a German left-back who was the best in the world in the first half of the 1960s, and that is Karl-Heinz Snellinger. Played for FC Cologne and AC Milan. Played in 4 World Cups from 1958 to 1970. Won the Bundesliga, won Serie A with AC Milan. 2 Cup Winners' Cups. The 1969 European Cup. And played in the 1966 World Cup final for Germany against England. And he was 3-time European Defender of the Year in 1962, 63 and 64. So at that time, he was your go-to world's best left-back. And he was more of a kind of defensive left-back in your kind of classic 4-4-2. Sometimes played as a sweeper for Germany. But Karl-Heinz Stellinger is a name you might not have heard of, but definitely one of the greatest left backs ever to have played the game.
Ausgerechnet Schwenninger, werden die Italiener sagen. Ausgerechnet Schwenninger. Es ist nicht zu glauben.
One of the earlier Brazilian left backs to play. Before we talked about Roberto Carlos earlier, but before Roberto Carlos, one of the longest standing Brazilian players was Leo Vigildo Jr. Now he mainly played for left back. Played in the 1982 and 86 World Cup, 5 times Brazilian state champion, and was in the 82 World Cup All-Star team, and 2 times South American Defender of the Year in 81 and 82. As we've seen with other versatile left backs, he eventually moved into the central midfield role, playing a defensive central midfield position, which he stayed at in the latter part of his careers. And I think it's a common theme with the greatest to play the game in this position is how flexible they are and interchangeable in positions. But before Junior came Nilton Santos, who's a legendary Brazilian left-back, playing mainly for Botafogo. Played in 4 World Cups, 1950, to 62, winning it in 58 and 62 in those great Pelé teams. And in 58, he was voted the World Cup's best defender. And in 1998, he was named in the FIFA World Team of the Century. He's often referred to as the greatest South American fullback of all time. A really pacey fullback, attacking, world-class dribbler, crossing, and incredible technique. And was known as one of the first defenders to advance so deep into opposition territory, becoming part of the attack, which we see so commonly today. But Nilton Santos has to be talked about as one of the greatest left-backs to play the game. Now, we wouldn't be able to talk about defenders without mentioning a few Italians, and first up I'd mention Antonio Cabrini, who played for Juventus. 3 World Cups, 78, 82 and 86 in that great Italian win in 82. But he was a bit more of a kind of no-nonsense defender, nicknamed the beautiful Antonio because of his good looks. Often referred to as the most popular defender in the history of Italian football. He would get forward as well as defensive, but he was very, very one-footed, so didn't like to cut inside much. But that left foot was good enough for him to score 9 goals for Italy. And his time at Juventus saw him win 6 Serie A titles, 2 Coppa Italia's, 1977 UEFA Cup, and the 1984 European Cup Winners' Cup. But Antonio Cabrini is up there with one of the greatest Italian defenders that have ever been. But before Cabrini came Facchetti, Giacinto Facchetti, who played in the 1966, 70 and 74 World Cup, an Inter Milan legend, 94 games for Italy. He won 4 Serie A's, 2 European Cups, the 1968 European Championship with Italy, and runner-up in the 1970 World Cup after losing that to that incredible Brazil team in the final. Despite that, he was in the 1970 World Cup All-Star team and a couple of times was voted the European Defender of the Year. He's potentially Europe's greatest ever wingback, who would make marauding runs up the field. But generally, when playing for Italy, he was much deeper as a fullback and could also play as centre-back, which he did later in his career. He's often compared to Franz Beckenbauer, but a kind of fullback version of Beckenbauer in his style of play and his leadership and technical ability. He is one of what was known as Le Grand Inter, a team known for their kind of complete defensive game. He was voted 5th in the Ballon d'Or in 1968 and is the only player to have a retired shirt number for Inter Milan. He was one of the greatest players in their history, having played 634 games for them. Perhaps challenging Facchetti for Europe's greatest ever fullback would be Ruud Krol. He was part of the Dutch total football team in the 70s, played in the 1974 and 78 World Cup, losing in the final both times. Club career, he played mainly for Ajax, but also for Napoli. 6 times Dutch champions, 3 European Cups for Ajax in 71, 72, 73. He was in the World Cup All-Star team in both those World Cups he played in and was 2 times European Defender of the Year. He's known as being the greatest defender in Dutch history and was a remarkable all-round defender who could play anywhere across the defence in that total football era. He captained the Dutch side to the World Cup final in 78, which they lost to Argentina, which we will be talking about a little bit more when we go on to Mario Kempes. But a very controversial World Cup that was. So, I mean, incredible that he was able to play so well under the conditions that they had there. Ruud Krol has to be up there with one of the all-time greats in that position.
Good solid tackle, and you must have heard Wolf. The breath knocked out of his body from that challenge from Krol, Rudy Krol. Giant of a fullback, and Wolf really took some hammer with that one.
Someone I've got a lot of memories of, whether fond or or upsetting is Andreas Brehme, who sadly died recently. Now, he was Germany's left back and played in the 86, 1990 and 94 World Cup, and he was in that team that knocked England out of the final in 1990 and went on to score the winner in the World Cup final in 1990. He was part of the three Germans in the inter-team, along with Klinsmann and Lothar Matthäus. But he was an incredibly versatile left wing back and such a great player. Like I said, he won the 1990 World Cup, but he played for Kaiserslautern as well as Inter Milan, who won the Bundesliga with, won Serie A with Milan, and was voted European Defender of the Year in 1990, as well as being the best defender in the World Cup. He was an incredible free kick taker and crosser of the ball, as well as taking penalties. He scored from the spot in the final in 1990 to win the World Cup. But yeah, Andreas Brehme, a classic kind of left wing back back in the 90s. But another German left back who's up there with the best of them was Paul Breitner. Now, Breitner, talking about the '78 World Cup and the controversy, he was actually the only player who refused to play because of what was going on there. So he didn't participate in the World Cup in '78, but he was in the '74 World Cup, and he was on the opposing team to Ruud Krol, and it was Paul Breitner who kind of put to bed Dutch total football, and along with Bertie Vogts and Franz Beckenbauer, kind of taught them a bit of a defensive lesson in that '74 final, and didn't let them play. He similar to Andreas Brehme, he scored a penalty in that World Cup final as the Germans won 2-1 against the Dutch, and then again in the 1982 World Cup, he would score a penalty in the World Cup final, but that time on the losing team, putting him in the elite company of Pelé, Vava, Zinedine Zidane, and Kylian Mbappe, of players who have scored in more than one World Cup final. Which leaves me just two Brazilians, really. One who I've mentioned in Roberto Carlos, and the other one, Marcelo, who's a serial winner of trophies, winning 5 Champions League titles and 6 La Ligas with Real Madrid. Went back to Fluminense at the end of his career, winning their first ever Copa Libertadores just last year. Marcelo was always such an incredibly entertaining player to watch, with so much kind of skill and trickery, but yeah, fantastic defender, so quick as well going forward. Definitely one of Madrid and Brazil's best, but Roberto Carlos is probably most well known Brazilian defender, especially in more recent times than some of the vintage players that I've talked about. But yeah, Roberto Carlos was such a kind of classic attacking fullback, and something I think a lot of us had never seen before, because he was so powerful, and just how he hit the ball, the power he hit the ball was just something we hadn't seen before, and something that was incredible. And he'll always be known for that free kick he scored in Le Tournoi against France when he was so far out, and he just put this incredible amount of side bend on the ball, which when he started it off just looked like it was going absolutely miles wide, and bent straight back in just to leave Fabian Barthez just stood in goal while it just span in behind him. And yeah, it wasn't the only time he did it. He did it a few times as well, probably, but that was probably the most bend we ever saw, and the one he was most known for.
The way to look at the ball, look at the way he's got it there. He's got it in his hands. He's having a good, careful look about it. It's placed absolutely perfect. Look at that. I mean, everything's set that he's going to hit it. I just wonder if they're kidding us on.
It's what, all of 30 yards, Andy?
Ah, why not? Well, it's a 30-yard free kick with a 20-yard run-up.
Dear, I don't believe it. What a goal we have just seen from Roberto Carlos.
Well, that was what was missing in Euro 96. That is quite incredible. Not so sure about the goalkeeper's position and what he saw, but we can't deny the quality of the strike. It had power, it had bend, it had accuracy. Watch this. Starts way wide of the goal. That's 2-3 yards wide and just clips the inside of the post. That is quite a magnificent free kick. I'm not so sure we'll see one better than that for many a year. Quite exquisite.
An absolutely stunning shot. Barthez, well, he was as much a spectator as I was.
He was part of the Galacticos era at Real Madrid after they signed him from Inter Milan, and won the La Liga 4 times, 3 Champions Leagues, and the World Cup with Brazil in 2002. But I think probably the greatest left back of all time. It's a hard one because he played a lot of his career at centre back, but I would mainly class him as a left back, and that is Paolo Maldini. He played his entire career with AC Milan, winning the Champions League 5 times and runner-up 3 times. He didn't have the luck of with winning anything with the Italian national team, coming runner-up when he played with them in the 1994 World Cup and runner-up in the European Championships in 2000. Now, he played in the 1990 World Cup, 94, 98 and 2002 World Cup. So you can already see his kind of longevity in the game. He was 4 times European Defender of the Year and often referred to as the greatest defender of all time. I think it's really whether you consider him a centre back or a left back, but he played number 3 for AC Milan, a shirt number which was retired with him when he stopped playing the game after 902 matches over 25 seasons for Milan, and he holds the all-time record for most appearances in the European Cup with 139 games. But he played at left back throughout the 90s, and it wasn't really until the 2000s till he switched to centre back. But he was just as adept at both positionings. He wasn't as attacking as a lot of the left backs we've mentioned, although he was fast and would kind of get forward in more of a supporting role than that kind of overlapping role. But he had such incredible technique and reading of the game. He was always known as Maldini was just the greatest. We all watch Messi bring Argentina the World Cup in Qatar. I'm sure you know about Maradona's incredible performances, which gave them victory in Mexico '86. But in 1978, there was a talismanic striker who gave Argentina their first ever victory on home soil. El Matador, Mario Kempes. Kempes was an Argentina and Valencia legend. He was Argentina's hero in 1982 with that World Cup win. He scored twice in the final, was Golden Boot for the tournament and Player of the Tournament. He was 2-time top goal scorer in La Liga with Valencia. He scored 116 goals in 184 league games for them. He won the Copa del Rey, Cup Winners' Cup and UEFA Super Cup. He was a classic centre forward, a great goal scorer, and incredibly hard working, which made him really hard to pick up from defenders as he was constantly on the move. Valencia signed Kempes for $500,000 from Rosario Central in 1976. This was the second highest transfer fee in the world that year, which was surprising as the chairman of Valencia hadn't even seen him play, but he'd scored 96 goals in 120 games for Rosario, so there was a lot of fuss about him. And apparently the then Valencia chairman was a big reader of Argentinian football magazines, so he'd heard a lot about Kempes, which led to him shelling out £500,000 on him. He had an instant impact at Valencia. He was top goal scorer in his first 2 seasons with them, with 24 and 28 goals. These were the 2 seasons which led to him going into the 1978 World Cup. Going into the World Cup, there was a rule for the Argentinian team had that they would not pick any foreign-based players, but they made an exception for Kempes, which can show you how highly they thought of him. It was quite possibly the most controversial World Cup ever, though. Probably more so than Mussolini's 1934 World Cup, or even Hitler's 1936 Olympics. There was a military coup in Argentina in 1976, and this led to calls for Argentina to be stripped of the 1978 World Cup due to terrible human rights that were happening in the country. FIFA refused to address what was happening and said that sport has no connection to politics. Thousands upon thousands of people have gone missing in the 2 years since the coup. They were known simply as the disappeared. Anyone who spoke out against the military rulers would mysteriously go missing. Bodies were turning up on Uruguayan beaches, thought to have been dropped out of planes alive. Concentration camps were seen less than a mile from River Plate Stadium. After the end of the military rule, approximately 30,000 people were reportedly gone. The military leader, General Videla, wanted to use the World Cup to show the world there was nothing to see in Argentina and how winning the World Cup would be his crowning achievement. The format of this World Cup was 2 group stages, with the second group stage going directly into the final. In the first group stage, Kempes had actually failed to score, but then he scored twice against Poland. In the following game, Argentina drew 0-0 with Brazil. The final matches of the group, unlike we see today, Brazil played first, beating Poland 3-1, and this meant Argentina would go into their game knowing they needed to win by 4 goals against Peru. Argentina had made the schedule for the tournament themselves, ensuring that they would play last in the group and know exactly what they needed to do to go through. There are huge rumours around the Peru game that it was a fix. After being kept up all night by Argentinian fans, Peru's bus went missing on the way to the ground, and they turned up with little time to prepare before the game. In a very suspicious move, General Videla went into Peru's changing room before the game, and there were rumours of threats to the Peruvian players. Argentina ended up winning the game 6-0, with Peru seemingly lying down. And they weren't a bad team at this time. They had a mean defence, and they were one of the best South American teams around. Kempes scored twice in the game, taking his tally to 4 for the tournament. Despite the controversial circumstances, Kempes was a shining light for the Argentinian team. Argentina would play the Netherlands in the final, with the Dutch playing their second World Cup final on the bounce. Johan Cruyff wasn't at the tournament. His family had been kidnapped before the tournament started, and he refused to travel. Despite some dubious refereeing decisions, the Dutch had taken Argentina all the way with an amazing performance. Kempes had scored the opener after 38 minutes, but after the Dutch equalised, the match went to extra time. Kempes scored again to make it 2-1, with Bertoni rounding off a 3-1 victory for Argentina. It was a brutal game, with any 50-50 decisions seemingly going Argentina's way. The Dutch players refused to collect their second-place medals, but Mario Kempes was undoubtedly the star of the match and the tournament. He was Golden Boot winner with 6 goals, player of the tournament, and an Argentine hero. At just 23 years old in 1978, Kempes was viewed as one of the best players in the world, but incredibly he would never score for Argentina again, with just 12 more caps. In the season following the World Cup, Valencia won the Copa del Rey, with Kempes scoring both in the 2-0 win over Real Madrid. This qualified them for the Cup Winners' Cup. Kempes starred in the run to the final, scoring 3 times against Rangers, once again against Barcelona, and 3 against Nantes in their run to the final. Much like Georgie Hadji's Galatasaray in 2000, Valencia faced Arsenal in the final. Similarly to the Galatasaray match, this was end 0-0 and go to penalties. Kempes actually missed his penalty, but would end a hero as top goalscorer in the competition, as Valencia won. Kempes went back to Argentina and played for River Plate for a season, winning the championship with them, before heading back to Valencia for a final 2 seasons. He was recently named as Valencia's greatest ever player in a poll of 100,000 fans, despite only spending 7 years there. After leaving Valencia, he played at various Austrian clubs with spells in Indonesia, China and Albania. Mario Kempes' career had very short highs, but he will always be remembered in the hearts of Valencia and Argentina fans. He was a centre-forward ahead of his time, and perhaps paved the way for forwards like Van Basten and Ronaldo who came later. Mario Kempes was number 99 on our list of 100 greatest ever players. Next week, I'll be back with a co-presenter, and we'll be talking about right-backs, and number 98 on the list, Ricardo Kaká.